What if the story we thought we knew about history's most famous figure wasn't the whole truth? What if hidden manuscripts, forgotten testimonies, and controversial accounts painted a picture that feels both familiar and unsettlingly different? That's exactly the mystery we're exploring today. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end. Because this story doesn't just belong to dusty libraries or ancient debates. It speaks directly to the way we imagine faith, history, and even ourselves. When most people picture Jesus, a certain image comes to mind: calm eyes, flowing robe, soft but powerful presence. It's the image shaped by centuries of paintings, cathedrals, films, and Sunday school stories. But here's the catch. Those images weren't created in his own time. They're interpretations, filtered through culture, politics, and imagination. And somewhere along the way, alternative descriptions, radical, vivid, sometimes unsettling, were pushed to the margins. The question is, why? Was it because they were false? Or because they were too dangerous, too disruptive, too different from what the mainstream church wanted people to believe? This tension between tradition and discovery is exactly why this topic matters. Because the way we choose to portray sacred figures shapes more than just art. It shapes how entire generations think about faith, power, and truth. And once you realize that, you start asking deeper questions. What's authentic? What's inherited? And what might still be waiting? Hidden in plain sight? In this video, we're not just going to retell an old legend. We're going to peel back the layers of one of the most fascinating and controversial accounts ever connected to Jesus. We'll ask where it came from, why some dismissed it as forgery, and why others believed it contained glimpses of hidden truth. Along the way, we'll also connect it to modern debates, because this isn't just about the past, it's about us. When we talk about Christianity, we often imagine a faith that has always looked the same. One unified image, one clear story, one consistent tradition. But history rarely works that way. In reality, the story of faith is messy, layered, and full of competing voices. And the figure at the center of it all, Jesus, is no exception. From the earliest days, people tried to describe him, not just through the Gospels we know today, but through letters, oral traditions, and texts that never made it into the official canon. Some were written to encourage believers, others to challenge authority, and some, perhaps, to preserve an image of Jesus that didn't quite fit the church's growing framework of power. Take a moment to imagine the ancient world. The early Christian movement was spreading across the Roman Empire. Communities in Jerusalem, Alexandria, Antioch, and Rome all shared stories of Jesus, but not always in the same way. In one place, he was the gentle healer. In another, the fiery prophet. In another, the divine Son clothed in almost unearthly glory. Which version was true? That question was just as alive back then as it is today. And this is where the controversy begins. At some point, an obscure text appeared, describing Jesus in terms that shocked some and fascinated others. He was not the delicate figure of stained glass windows, nor the blonde-haired shepherd of Renaissance art. Instead, the description was raw, specific, and far more human: his stature, his hair, his piercing eyes. It painted a portrait of a man you could almost see walking in the marketplace or standing before a Roman governor. Now, to us today, that may not sound radical. After all, artists have taken liberties for centuries. But in the early centuries of Christianity, such a physical description raised big questions. Why? Because Christianity was never just about who Jesus was, it was about what he represented. And the way you described him could shift everything. Think about it like this. Political leaders throughout history have used portraits and statues to project power. A strong jawline, an imposing height, a steady gaze. All these details were chosen deliberately to shape how people saw authority. In the same way, describing Jesus wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a theological and political one. Was he majestic and intimidating? Was he ordinary and humble? Each answer carried weight, and each community had a reason for telling the story a certain way. Let's connect this to something modern. Consider how films and media portray iconic figures today. Take The Chosen, for example. Jonathan Rumi's performance as Jesus is deeply human, compassionate, approachable, and relatable. Compare that with Jim Caviezel in The Passion of the Christ, a Jesus of intense suffering, powerful silence, and overwhelming sacrifice. Both portrayals shape how viewers feel about Jesus, even if they don't realize it. And just like in the ancient world, those portrayals reflect the values and struggles of the time in which they were made. That's why this ancient description, controversial, debated, even dismissed, still matters. Because it reveals the ongoing struggle between how people want to see Jesus and how others insist he must be seen. Was he more human than divine? More divine than human? Was he approachable or awe-inspiring? Every description answered those questions in a unique way, and every answer influenced the faith of entire generations. Of course, not everyone welcomed this alternative account. Some church leaders rejected it outright, calling it a forgery, a falsehood, or even a threat. Others, however, whispered about its possible truth, wondering if it offered a glimpse into something authentic that had been lost. The debate was less about the document itself and more about what it represented: the power of imagination, the shaping of identity, and the fear of losing control over the narrative. Here's where it gets interesting for us today. We live in an age where information is everywhere, and competing voices constantly fight for our attention. Some claim the official story, others push for alternative views. Sound familiar? It's exactly what was happening in the early centuries of Christianity. Human nature hasn't changed. The struggle to define truth, to preserve authority, and to question the official version is as alive now as it was then. So, when we look at this mysterious description of Jesus, we're not just peering into the past, we're holding up a mirror to ourselves. We're reminded that history is rarely neat and tidy, that truth is often contested, and that the images we cling to are as much about us as they are about the one we're trying to picture. And here's the mid-script hook. If this description challenged the early church, what would it do to us today? Imagine if tomorrow an ancient manuscript were uncovered that portrayed Jesus in a way completely different from every painting, film, and tradition we know. Would we dismiss it? Would we embrace it? Or would we, like generations before us, find ourselves caught between doubt and wonder? That's the power of this story. It's not just about whether the description was authentic or fabricated. It's about how we react when the image of the sacred collides with the unexpected. And in that collision, something deeply human always emerges. Controversy has always been the companion of faith. Wherever belief rises, questions follow, and with them, division. The mysterious description of Jesus we touched on earlier became one of those lightning rods for debate. Was it authentic? Was it heretical? Or was it something more complicated, an inconvenient voice that didn't fit neatly into the church's carefully crafted image of the Messiah? Let's step into the mindset of early church leaders for a moment. Christianity, in its first centuries, was not the global faith we know today. It was fragile, constantly under pressure from Roman authorities, from internal divisions, and from rival movements that claimed to offer the real truth. For leaders struggling to unify believers under one banner, the idea of multiple competing images of Jesus was dangerous. Unity required control, and control required one standard version of the story. That's why texts like this were often dismissed as forgeries. The reasoning wasn't always about historical accuracy, it was about protecting authority. To allow competing portraits was to risk confusion, and confusion, for a young and growing religion, could mean collapse. But here's where things get fascinating. Despite official rejection, these alternative descriptions never fully disappeared. They resurfaced in whispers, in hidden manuscripts, in the margins of history. Some monks copied them in secret. Some artists quietly borrowed details for their work. And centuries later, scholars would stumble upon these fragments and ask, what if the church tried to erase something it couldn't control? This pattern isn't unique to Christianity. Throughout history, institutions, whether political, religious, or cultural, have often shaped narratives to maintain stability. Think about how governments present history in schools, or how media outlets frame major events today. It's not always about lying. Sometimes it's about emphasizing one side of the story while ignoring another. And in that sense, the controversy over Jesus' description is less about ancient religion and more about timeless human behavior. Now, let's bring this forward with a modern example. When Mel Gibson released The Passion of the Christ in 2004, the film sparked massive debates. Some praised it as a powerful portrayal of Jesus' sacrifice. Others criticized it for being too violent, too narrow in scope, or even anti-Semitic in its tone. The point is this: a single artistic portrayal of Jesus in the 21st century was enough to ignite firestorms of disagreement. If that happens today, with all our media, technology, and pluralism, imagine how much more explosive it was in a fragile early church trying to hold itself together. Another modern parallel is The Chosen. The series has captured millions with its deeply human Jesus. But not everyone agrees with its portrayal. Some argue it takes too many creative liberties. Others claim it finally makes the gospel stories relatable. Again, the debate isn't just about accuracy, it's about ownership. Who gets to decide how Jesus is shown? The producers, the audience, the church, or history itself? The ancient description we're exploring carried the same weight. It wasn't just words on parchment, it was a claim to authority. To accept it meant reimagining Jesus in a way that threatened the established order. To reject it meant possibly silencing a voice of truth. Either way, the decision shaped how billions would one day envision the Son of God. And here's the irony: the more leaders tried to suppress alternative portrayals, the more they seemed to resurface. It's almost as if history itself refuses to be neatly boxed in. You can burn manuscripts, silence voices, or paint over images, but fragments always find a way back to the surface. They remind us that truth is rarely a straight line. It's a mosaic, made of pieces both official and forgotten. So why does this matter for us today? Because we live in an age of contested narratives. Social media feeds us 100 versions of the same story. News outlets spin events in opposite directions, and we, like the early Christians, are forced to ask, which version do I trust? Which picture feels true? And perhaps most importantly, am I willing to sit with the tension that maybe the full story is bigger than any one version? This is the mid-script hook. Imagine if your entire picture of Jesus, his appearance, his character, even his role was built on choices made by leaders centuries ago. Choices shaped not only by faith, but also by politics, culture, and fear. Would that shake your belief? Or would it challenge you to dig deeper? To separate the essence of faith from the details of history? That's the crossroads this story puts us at. It forces us to look at faith not as a static image carved in stone, but as a living conversation, shaped by time, power, and human longing. And perhaps, in wrestling with that, we find something more valuable than certainty. We find depth. Because in the end, the real danger was never in describing Jesus differently. The real danger was in assuming that one description could ever capture the fullness of who he is. If the first part of this journey showed us the mystery of the description, and the second part highlighted the controversies, then this third part reveals something even more profound: the long-lasting impact of how we imagine Jesus. Because make no mistake, images are powerful. They shape faith, inspire devotion, and sometimes even divide entire communities. For centuries, the church worked hard to preserve a unified image of Christ, and to some degree, it succeeded. Walk into cathedrals across Europe and you'll see remarkably consistent portrayals. A tall figure, bearded, with flowing hair, eyes filled with compassion yet authority. These images became more than decoration. They became a kind of theology in color and stone. For the illiterate masses of the Middle Ages, those paintings and statues were their Bible. What they saw was what they believed. But beneath the polished surface of tradition, alternative currents kept flowing. Artists in the East sometimes emphasized different features: darker skin, sharper lines, more mysterious expressions. Folk traditions in Africa and Asia gave Jesus local characteristics, showing him as one of their own. Each culture, consciously or not, was answering the same question: how should we see him? And that question is still alive today. Consider the debates around modern depictions of Jesus in media. Some call for a more historically accurate portrayal, a Middle Eastern Jew with darker skin, not the European features that dominate Western art. Others insist that the image isn't what matters, the message is. But here's the challenge: whether we admit it or not, visuals matter. The way Jesus is pictured influences how people relate to him. Is he distant and divine, or near and human? Is he a suffering servant or a triumphant king? Each image nudges faith in a certain direction. This is where the ancient controversial description becomes so important. It reminds us that there was never just one way of imagining Jesus from the very beginning. Multiple versions existed, and the battle over which one would dominate was as much about power as it was about piety. Let's bring this closer to real life. Think about how different communities in America picture Jesus today. In immigrant churches, Jesus is often portrayed in ways that reflect their homeland traditions. In Black churches, he is sometimes depicted as African, a symbol of identification and empowerment. In contemporary youth ministries, he might be shown in jeans and sneakers, approachable and relatable. None of these portrayals are wrong. They are attempts to bridge the gap between the eternal and the everyday. So what does that mean for us? It means the controversy is not just an ancient debate, it's a mirror for our own. We live in a polarized world where images, whether political, religious, or cultural, carry enormous weight. A single picture on social media can spark outrage or inspire movements. And the story of Jesus' description teaches us something vital. Images are never neutral. They carry meaning, intention, and consequences. Here's another layer to consider: the danger of reducing faith to an image. While portrayals can inspire, they can also limit. If we lock ourselves into one vision of Jesus, we risk missing the fullness of who he is. The controversial description, whether true or not, disrupts that tendency. It forces us to reconsider. It reminds us that faith cannot be fully captured on canvas, in sculpture, or even in words. Faith is bigger. It lives in mystery. Let's pause here and think about personal experience. Many people's journey of faith is shaped by images they grew up with. Maybe it was a crucifix on the wall, a stained glass window, or even a scene from a movie. Those images sink deep into memory, but over time, many realize that their image of God has to grow with them. Childhood pictures may no longer be enough when facing adult struggles, and that's okay. In fact, that's necessary. The controversial description of Jesus acts like a challenge. It pushes us not to cling too tightly to one image, but to let faith expand. Here's the mid-script hook. Imagine standing face to face with Jesus himself. Would you recognize him? Would he look anything like the portraits hanging in churches or the actors in films? Or would the shock of the unexpected strip away all the pictures and leave you with something more raw, more personal, more real? This is why the story still matters. It's not about settling a historical argument. It's about rediscovering the freedom to let faith breathe, to realize that no single image has the final word, to accept that mystery is part of the truth. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson of this whole controversy. Jesus has always defied neat categories. He was a carpenter who changed empires, a teacher who defied kings, a man who carried the weight of humanity, and every attempt to capture him, whether in a manuscript, a painting, or a film, will always fall short. But in that gap between image and reality, we find the space to keep searching, keep wondering, and keep believing. So, after walking through this fascinating journey, from hidden manuscripts to fiery controversies, from medieval cathedrals to modern cinema, what can we actually take away? Why should a centuries-old debate about how Jesus looked or how he was described matter to us today? The simple answer is this: because the way we imagine the sacred always reflects the way we imagine ourselves. Every portrait of Jesus, whether majestic or humble, human or divine, tells us as much about the people who created it as it does about him. It reveals their fears, their hopes, their struggles for identity, and the same is true for us. Think about the images you carry of God, of faith, of truth. Where did they come from? Were they handed down by family, shaped by Sunday school, borrowed from films, or discovered in personal moments of prayer? And do those images still serve you today? Or have they become too small for the questions you're now asking? The controversy over that ancient description of Jesus reminds us that faith isn't static. It's living, growing, and sometimes unsettling. Just as the early church had to wrestle with multiple portrayals, so do we. And that wrestling is not a weakness, it's a sign of depth. It means we care enough to ask hard questions, to hold tension, to search for truth even when it refuses to fit neatly in our boxes. Here's something worth remembering. Certainty may feel safe, but it can also become a cage. Mystery, on the other hand, is uncomfortable, but it sets us free. The hidden portrait of Jesus, whether authentic or not, forces us into the mystery. It reminds us that God cannot be fully captured by pen, paint, or camera. He is always more than our imagination, more than our traditions, more than even our doubts. And yet, there's beauty in the attempt. The paintings, the manuscripts, the films, they may fall short, but they point us towards something greater. They are like windows, not walls. They remind us that the sacred is not locked in the past, but continues to break into the present, inviting us to see with fresh eyes. Let's ground this in a real example. Many people who watched The Passion of the Christ said it changed the way they saw sacrifice. Many who watched The Chosen say it helps them see Jesus as a friend. Neither portrayal is perfect, but both have touched lives. That's the power of images. They may not give us certainty, but they can awaken something deep inside us. Compassion, hope, courage, or the simple reminder that we are not alone. And maybe that's the real gift of even the most controversial descriptions. They force us to look again, to ask not just, what did he look like? But, who is he for me? Who is he in my life, right now? That shift from curiosity about history to transformation in the present is where the story becomes alive. So here's my invitation. Don't be afraid of the mystery. Don't be afraid if your image of Jesus doesn't look like the paintings in museums or the actors on screen. Let your faith breathe. Let it expand. Let it challenge you. Because faith that never stretches is faith that never grows. And maybe, in the end, that's what the ancient description was really about. Not about proving or disproving history, but about shaking us out of complacency. About reminding us that the sacred is not a finished portrait, but a living presence. So let me leave you with this question. If Jesus walked into your life today, into your home, your city, your story, would you recognize him, or would he surprise you? Looking different from what you expected, yet more real than you ever imagined. That's the mystery worth pondering, and that's why this story still matters. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you think alternative descriptions of Jesus threaten faith or enrich it? Should we hold tightly to tradition or remain open to new possibilities? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading and responding. And if this video stirred your curiosity, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of history, faith, and culture, because in the end, whether we see Jesus in a manuscript, a painting, or a film, the real question is not, what did he look like? The real question is, what does he mean to us today?